A strong character is not a rigid character. In fact, exactly the opposite is true. Although it's important to be firm when you know something is right and to maintain that right position even when the crowd is going against you and wants to put you down, it's also important for a person to remember that no person is God. Nobody is infallible or invincible. Sometimes when the tide has run against you for a long time, it may be that what you held as a certainty was in fact not true in the light of overwhelming circumstances. It's not only right, it's also smart to be able to see more than one way to accomplish a task. It's wise to see more than one solution to any problem. It's a good skill to see things as someone else might see them. Because when the plan that served you so well for so long doesn't work anymore, then it's time to find another way. It's time to bend. It's time to move on, to change, to compromise, to talk. Or you'll risk snapping like a dead branch in a stiff breeze. When it comes to lasting a long time, to standing tall and being strong, but knowing when to bend, the trees have a lot to teach us. I don't know if you have ever had first-hand experience of the tremendous destructive power of tropical force storms. I've experienced a hurricane and had a chance to witness close-up and personal what a combination of wind and water can do to everything that stands in its path. The rain fell so long and hard that it completely soaked the ground and loosened the roots of even the tallest trees. At the same time, the wind blew with such force that century-old trees, tall and hard and strong, were blown over like so many toy soldiers standing on parade knocked down by a toddler at play. However, the enormous willows, some standing tall as a house and covering what would be an entire lot in some parts of the city, lithe and flexible, and bending and bowing gracefully to the slightest breeze or to the mightiest gust, weathered the heavy blows of the storm. They were almost the only large objects left standing after the air had cleared. Not only were tall trees and power poles and seawalls crushed by the storm, houses built to stand up under normal circumstances collapsed and their roofs were carried off in one piece and blown clear into the next county. Everything that tried to oppose the storm's fury was damaged or destroyed. Everything that gave way, that was strong yet flexible, survived. Maybe some of you remember playing the game of scissors, stone, and paper when you were kids. This game teaches a child to think about the nature of materials, how something can be strong or appropriate in one situation and yet be the wrong tool, a losing proposition in another. It also teaches a child to vary his approach, to be flexible, so that his opponent can't anticipate what he's going to do, and recognize that even as you are trying to outsmart the other guy is also trying to outsmart you. That's why all our best-laid plans do sometimes go astray. It's entirely possible and even likely that nothing will ever turn out as we expect. And so no matter how much we prepare for one turn of fate, something will sneak up from the blind side when we're least expecting to be interrupted at our accustomed rounds. When that time comes, as it will, the people who survive and even triumph over the unanticipated will be people who are ready to adapt. They will bend in the first gust. They will step out of the path of the charging bull. They will pivot while holding their place in the scheme of things. They will step back and let something else bear the brunt of impact. I don't really think it's less important or more important today to be open to change and flexible in adapting to it than it has been in the past. It's always been important to be flexible and far-sighted, anticipating whenever we can, and when we can't anticipate, being prepared for all possibilities. Yet amazingly enough, when it comes to flexibility and being able to adapt to the changing circumstances of history, the oldest and longest-lasting empire in the world is that of the Chinese. Many dynasties, many emperors, many reigns, but always the empire endured. How was this possible? It wasn't because of military power or tremendous wealth, because over the course of thousands of years, those things came and went many times. The real reason the Chinese empire lasted so long was because of the work of two very different philosophers. The first, Confucius, provided ideas that became the solid foundation of the imperial government. He supplied the theories by which the imperial government was conducted. Confucius taught a code of ethics that provided specific instruction on how the ruling classes could fulfill their duty to the nation and maintain law and order. He was essentially a lawgiver, a thinker who supplied some fixed beacons for navigating the ship of state into the unknown future. The second philosopher, whose name was Lao Tse, had a very different perspective. Historians associate Lao Tse's ideas with magic and with mystical powers, but he also placed a very modern kind of emphasis on the need for intuition and the ability to react quickly to change. Lao Tse pointed out that sometimes it is best to advance by retreating, that sometimes wars can be won by losing a few battles, and long-term goals can be achieved by accepting short-term reversals. Sometimes it is best to resist like the tall grasses bending in the wind, or like a river finding a new route around an obstacle. A powerful ocean wave smashing onto a beach may wash away a sand dune, but the individual grain of sand simply goes with the flow and is unharmed. By incorporating both these perspectives, the ancient Chinese emperor developed a structure similar to that of modern buildings in Los Angeles and Tokyo that are built to withstand earthquakes. Their foundations are strongly reinforced, but there's also room for sway and give. Flexibility is simple in theory, but tremendously challenging in practice. It means we have to learn to distinguish between what we can control and what is beyond our control. Practicing flexibility requires great self-knowledge and iron self-control, like a master of the Oriental martial arts. To be flexible does not mean to be weak, to flounder about aimlessly and confused because we think there's nothing to be done. No, it requires self-discipline. Flexibility requires a cool head, an appraising eye, poise, balance, and judgment. Up to now, we've mostly talked about what might be called tactical flexibility, where a specific situation requires a knowledge of the various alternatives, and a specific set of circumstances requires nimbleness and dexterity. More difficult and more important is the inner flexibility and long-range adaptability that are called for from the person who wants not just to survive, but succeed. A very wise man once said, "You can't step in the same river twice. Every moment all things are changing, and the next minute is never like the last one. Whenever you achieve a hard-won success, it's always because you've been able to create a flexible response to the conflicting needs and ambitions and feelings of other people. You've been able to sidestep the accidents of fate and the quirks of nature and the innate tendency we all have to depend on yesterday's solutions to solve today's problems." It's interesting to observe that at one of the times of greatest luxury and power and perhaps complacency ever in the history of the world, the heyday of the Roman Empire, a philosophy arose that attempted to teach these men who ruled the known world how to govern themselves. These philosophers, who called themselves Stoics, taught that in order simply to survive in life, let alone be a leader, you must learn to take responsibility for the way things affect you. At the same time, you must learn to bend with the wind of forces too great for your control. This kind of self-measurement and self-control should be part of every grown-up's character. After all, an adult is the leader of his own family, of his children, who grow up in part learning from his example. To be firm but fair, to be clear and consistent but flexible, is to possess maturity. A wise and flexible old gentleman used to dine every month in his club downtown, sitting at a long table covered with a white linen tablecloth and silver candlesticks, and served by tuxedoed waiters, loved to regale companions with the fruits of his many years of experience. After dessert and coffee were served, he would push back from the table and light an enormous imported cigar. "This cigar is the only indulgence of an old man," he would say with a chuckle, and then he'd launch into one of his stories. They usually began with a question, such as, did I ever tell you about the time when I was setting up factories for the giant XYZ Corporation in the backwoods of Georgia and was compelled to teach them a little lesson in business and good manners? Although the stories always started out the same, no two stories were ever alike, and there would always be a wealth of wisdom through example, a veritable mother lode of remarkable instruction. Well, this old man, who was so old and so wise and so flexible, has one ironclad rule for dealing with other people. This rule involved never being the first to break a bargain, and always assuming that what happened before should not happen again. He said, if a man fools me once, I think, that's not nice, and I remember it. And if the same man fools me a second time, I think, shame on you. If the same fellow tricks me a third time, well, I have been warned and should have changed my ways and didn't, and I think, shame on me.